I have talked about some of my favorite retro games in the past, based on the consoles therefore. But my favorite one of all is the Commodore 64, since that was the first microcomputer I had as a kid. So I may have done a list on some of my favorite C64 games before in the past. But here are some more of my favorites. So without further ado, I'm Professor Retro, and these are more of my favorite Commodore 64 games. MULE, which stands for Multi-Use Labor Element, wasn't just ahead of its time. It was from the future, created by Ozark Softscape and published by Electronic Arts. Mule dropped players into the shoes of space colonists trying to tame the planet Arata. That's Atari spelled backwards, by the way. Clever, huh? Here's what made it great. It's part economic sim, part strategy, part social experiment. Players claim land, decide whether to produce food, energy, smith ore, or crystal, and deploy their adorable robotic creatures called mules to work the blocks. Mule's gameplay is broken up into parts. First is what I like to call the resource phase. Here you get your mule, and then you pick which resource you wish to mine, and then you go out and pick a plot. However, you just can't pick it on your own. You have to contend with a random choice, and if you get the spot, that is the resource you want to mine. Followed by the auction phase. Here you buy and sell what resources you have and want. This is pure capitalism at best, folks. Now, if you think that's all about the game, then it throws you some curveballs that trick you up with some things like pirate attacks and pest infestations, as well as droughts and so on. This is the game that taught me that life isn't always fair. Take the auction phase, for example. Here you learn that everyone will want to sell or buy from you on your terms. Mule is a game that can teach you about capitalism and betrayal all in one shot. So if you like games that have economy building and betrayal, Mule is the game for you. Released in 1984, Space Taxi puts you in the boots of a futuristic cab driver, ferrying passengers from platform to platform. Sounds simple, right? This wasn't your average side-scroller. This was physics-based gameplay before that was even a buzzword. You had to control your vertical and lateral thrusters with finesse. Crash too hard and it's game over. Overshoot a landing pad. Hope you like the sound of digital fireballs. It was hard, but it was also incredibly rewarding. Now here's where things get a bit spicy. Voice samples. Real, actual voice clips in 1984 in a game. Such as, "Hey taxi, up please, and thanks." For a kid in the 80s, this was practically sci-fi magic. Most games back then barely had music. Space Taxi had a talking passenger. That kind of polish was mind-blowing and made the world feel alive in a way most early games didn't. Space Taxi wasn't content with just simple up and down gameplay. Each level introduced new mechanics, teleporters, moving platforms, deadly obstacles like bouncing balls and lasers. 1 second you're navigating a calm cityscape, the next you're dodging killer beach balls that like it's a game of dodgeball in hell. One thing that makes this simple-looking game a bit of a challenge is there's no mini-map and no GPS to help you get to where you need to go. You just have to rely on pure exploration for each of the worlds. Despite its primitive graphics, Space Taxi is surprisingly immersive. The constant hum of the engine, the tension of landing safely, the countdown of your fuel gauge, it all keeps you on the edge like it's playing Crazy Taxi, but trapped in a minimalist sci-fi novella. Now, I love this game for simplistic yet difficult gameplay. What it lacks in graphics, it makes up in challenge. From each of the different locations, you have to try to land without crashing. If you like Crazy Taxi, then you'll love Space Taxi. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, they made a Rocky horror game for the Commodore 64? Why yes, yes they did. And guess what? It's actually kind of awesome. Released in 1985 by CLR Group, the Rocky Horror Show on the C64 is one of those oddball tie-in games that should have been terrible. How do you take a gender-bending sci-fi musical comedy and cram it into a floppy disk? First off, yes, it's very 1980s, but for a C64 title, the game nails the aesthetic of the movie surprisingly well. You got the Gothic mansion, the iconic characters like Riff Raff, Magenta, and Frankenfurter, all recognizable in their clunky 8-bit glory. You play as either Brad or Janet, and your mission is to rescue your partner who's been turned into stone, classic Rocky Horror weirdness. You explore the mansion, collect scattered body parts, yes, you actually do, and rebuild your lover before the clock hits midnight. It's got a Jet Set Willy meets Scooby-Doo vibe, navigating brooms, solving puzzles, dodging enemies all under time pressure. It's simple, but it works. It encourages replay because every playthrough can go differently depending on how fast you are and which character you choose. Let's be honest, most movie games from the 80s dish the soul of the source material. Not this one. The Rocky Horror Show on C64 is quirky, campy, and full of tongue-in-cheek humor. The devs knew what kind of audience they were making it for, and they embraced the absurdity. Let's not forget, though, it was 1985. A game featuring cross-dressing aliens, sexual innuendo, and horror comedy tropes was pretty gutsy for the time. It flew under the radar in some countries and even got labeled controversial in others. One thing I do like about this game is you really can't die. But if you get caught, instead of dying, you strip down to your undergarments, which now you have to find both the body parts to rebuild your partner, as well as your clothes. So if you like absurd movie-based games, the Rocky Horror Picture Show is for you. Released in 1983, LoadRunner quickly became one of the most addictive puzzle platforms of the 1980s, and while it debuted on the Apple II, it was the C64 version that really polished the gold, thanks to the sweet SID chip sound and smooth scrolling. You run around, collect gold, avoid robots, dig holes, but beneath the minimalist surface lies a game of pure strategy and timing. These robots aren't dumb. They mimic your movements, trap you, corner you. Every level feels like a ticking time bomb of tension. And for you that like to create your own levels, LoadRunner came with a built-in level editor. In 1983, on the C64, that was mind-blowing for the time. Kids were creating custom levels decades before user-generated content was even a buzzword. LoadRunner also takes full advantage of the C64's capabilities. But what really hits it home is how it makes use of the SID chip for both the music and the sound effects. The sound does splat when you trap a robot, to the fanfare music when you clear a level. LoadRunner is a classic platformer that, even since it was in its arcade to the home gaming scene, has been ported all over, and is still sold up today as a classic game. For me, this game is a game that got me into platformers before games like Super Mario. First off, let's talk about the origin story of Spy vs. Spy. It wasn't just a random game idea. It was based on the legendary Mad Magazine comic strip by Antonio Ferraz. I probably butchered that. The concept: two identical spies, one in black, one in white, locked in eternal battle of wits, traps, and explosions. When First Star Software adapted this into a video game in '84, something magical happened. They didn't just recreate the look, they nailed the actual spirit of the game itself. Unlike most games of the time, Spy vs. Spy wasn't just about high scores or shooting waves of enemies. It was about outsmarting your opponent. You and your friend, or the computer, are dropped into an embassy full of rooms, traps, and secret items. The goal? Find your gear, passport, cash, keys, and secret plans, and escape before the other spy gets wise. Here's where it gets genius, though. You can booby-trap everything. Place a bucket over a door, wire the cabinets, set bombs in the briefcases. If your opponent isn't careful, kaboom! Respawn City. It's like Home Alone Cold War Edition. One of my favorite traps you can use is electrified water bucket. Here you just put a bucket above a closed door, and when your opponent opens it, and not only does it get them wet, they get electrocuted at the same time. It's like a more dangerous version of the old tar and feather prank. The C64 version was ahead of its time, especially in its multiplayer. It used a real-time split screen, letting both players move freely around the map at the same time. No waiting your turn, and no pausing, your rival, and a whole building of potential chaos. You gotta remember, though, this was the 80s. Most games barely had side-scrolling, and yet Spy vs. Spy gave you dynamic traps, real-time player versus player, and an actual objective beyond get to the end. That's some big-brain game design right there. The animation is so expressive for an 8-bit game. The way the spies flail when they're electrocuted or fall off screen after a trap goes off is pure cartoon violence in the best way. And the music? The bouncy little tune drills itself into your brain and stays there humming along as you try to outfox your rival. Spy vs. Spy spawned some great sequels. It hit the NES, the Master System, the Amiga, and yet it's the C64 version that people always come back to. Why? Because it captured lightning in a bottle. It was more than a game, it was a battle of wits with banana peels and bombs. Hell, even today, its influence is felt. Games like Overcooked, Among Us, and Screen Cheat owe something to its chaotic trap-laying DNA. For me, Spy vs. Spy is one of those games with great replay value because you have to change up your strategy to trick up the other spy. I've been a fan of it since its old magazine origins to the game and its ports. You can find it on the NES to DOS. Hell, if you remember the old Mad Sketch show they've had back in the day, they have a few animated versions of the old magazine Spy vs. Spy segment as well. Released in 1984 by Epix, this game wasn't just great for its time, it's still a masterclass in gameplay, atmosphere, and innovation. First off, holy crap, the atmosphere Impossible Mission was one of the earliest games to actually feel like it had a world you could believe in. From the very start, the game hit you with digitized speech, which was mind-blowing in 1984.
Another visitor. Stay a while. Stay forever.
That voice burned in a generation's brain. It was creepy, mysterious, and instantly iconic. And the silent. This game had no music on purpose. Instead, it let the echoey sound effects create a feeling of eerie isolation. You weren't a hero charging into battle, you were an intruder in a deadly robotic fortress, and the game felt like it. Impossible Mission mixes precision platforming with puzzle solving in a way that still holds up today. Your goal? Stop the evil Professor Elvin Adambender by searching his underground lair for puzzle pieces to crack a master code. You've got killer robots patrolling the rooms, elevators, and platforms to navigate, and get this, no weapons. That's right. You can't shoot anything. You're an agent, not Rambo. You survive with your wits, your reflexes, and some well-timed acrobatics. The movement is smooth and fluid, especially for 1984 standards. The somersault animation, legendary. It looked cool. It felt great. And every room was a challenge. Do I risk searching the chair while robots patrolling? Can I disable that robot long enough to finish the scan? As you search rooms, you gather pieces of a password that unlocks the final showdown, but the puzzle is randomized every time you play. That means no two runs are the same. You're not just memorizing the layout, you're thinking, planning, and adapting. You might breeze through one game, then spend the next one tearing your hair out trying to find out what the last piece is. For a game made in 1984, this was absolutely revolutionary. Impossible Mission isn't just a relic, it's a blueprint. Games like Prince of Persia, Flashback, and even Metroid took inspiration from its mix of exploration, danger, and style. It was ahead of its time in most every way. I love this game from the eerie voice at the start that told you to stay forever, to the puzzles and the platforming. It kept the challenge fresh and exciting till this day. I haven't beaten this game since I kept getting attacked by those pesky killer robots. Now, I've created a video explaining why I love Jumpman so much, which I'll link in the description below for you to check out. But for those of you who don't want to do that, Jumpman tasked you with defusing bombs planted by terrorists across a series of increasingly wild levels. Sounds serious, right? But the gameplay is pure platform bliss. Each level is a single screen filled with ladders, ropes, conveyor belts, disappearing platforms, and other deadly traps. Your job? Avoid hazards, climb strategically, and defuse every bomb before you get blasted or fall to your death. What makes Jumpman really stand out is its level design. Most early platformers repeated the same gimmicks over and over. Not here, though. Every stage in Jumpman feels like a fresh idea. One level has bullets flying at you from all sides. Others has disappearing ladders. There's even a level where the platforms vanish as you touch them. It's like the devs ask themselves, what kind of chaos can we throw at the players next? And then just went for it. Yes, Jumpman's movements is a little floaty. He has this weird momentum thing going on that takes some getting used to, but once you adjust, the game feels incredibly precise. It's kind of like the C64 version of Dark Souls. Tough at first, but fair once you understand the rules. However, I do have to warn you, if you miss a jump or trip, you die even from the lowest of heights. For 1983, Jumpman is doing some wild stuff under the hood. The game loads levels dynamically, uses tight sprite collision detection, and even has a smart enemy AI. Well, smart enough for the time. And don't forget the sound design. The music is minimal, but the sound effects are iconic. That beep when you defuse a bomb, forever burned into your memory. Jumpman didn't get the same love as Donkey Kong or Mario Brothers, but it inspired an entire wave of precision platformers. It showed that you could make a deep, challenging experience with just a few tools and a ton of creativity. There was even a sequel, Jumpman Jr., and it's just as good. Today, Jumpman still holds up. It's tough, imaginative, and a great reminder that you don't need 3D graphics or a big budget to make a classic. It's one of my favorite games, and I continue to play it as much as I can. Released in 1991, nearly a decade after the system launched, and yet it works. Not just as a curiosity, but as a fully playable, surprisingly immersive dungeon crawler. Let's be clear though, Eye of the Beholder was a PC powerhouse. It was a 3D grid-based RPG with real-time combat, party management, and a first-person view of twisting maze-like dungeons. So I bet you're wondering how in the hell does a game like Eye of the Beholder run on C64 hardware? The answer is sheer wizardry. The port was done by an Australian developer by the name of Anders Axelsson, with the help from a group of passionate C64 fans who saw the game as a technical challenge and then actually pulled it off. And here's what's wild. This isn't some watered-down shadow of the original. The core game is all here. You get the same party creation screen, the same atmospheric dungeons, the same puzzle-solving combat, and magic, all in the glorious low-res C64 style. Yes, the graphics are chunky, yes, loading times can be a bit long, but for a machine that wasn't supposed to be doing any of this, it feels like black magic. The scrolling is smooth, the controls are responsive, and the game even features a music track and DJ sound effects that somehow don't melt the C64's mainframe. What makes Eye of the Beholder great on any platform is the atmosphere, and somehow, even with the C64's limitation, the game still feels immersive as hell. The limited color palette actually helps sell the claustrophobic torchlit vibe. The flickering walls, the quiet, eerie moment broken only by shuffles of your party's boots. It's minimalist, but effective. Lastly, let's not forget, the game still supports full party combat, spell, ranged weapons, inventory juggling, and the strategic complexity, but streamlined just enough to run on an 8-bit hardware system. I love this game and its many ports since the C64 days of the game. Yes, it was released a year after the C64 was out, but still the game holds up even against other great RPGs of the time, like the Ultima series. Released back in 1984, Boulder Dash didn't just move pixels, it moved minds. It was created by Peter Liepa and Chris Gray. Boulder Dash was ahead of its time. It wasn't just a game, it was an idea that spawned ports, sequels, and imitations for decades. But nothing beats the rock-solid C64 version. Now, at a glance, it might seem simple. You play as Rockford, digging through dirt, collecting diamonds, dodging boulders, but don't let the basic premise fool you. This game is a masterclass in puzzle design, tension, and pure 8-bit charm. Every move you make will matter. Will that boulder fall and crush you? Can you outrun the fireflies? Can you trigger a chain reaction to free more diamond without getting yourself buried alive? And as for Rockford, this little guy had personality before it was even cool. Look at that sass, the eye roll. He's basically the 8-bit Indiana Jones of mining. The level design is really clever. There's no right solution, just the one you survive long enough to pull it off. And every stage ups the ante with tighter spaces, trickier timing, and enemies that really don't want you to get rich. Now, I love this game for its deceptively simple gameplay. You have the fireflies and the boulders. This game's got so much popularity that it even got a sequel in Boulder Dash 2, Rockford's Revenge. Now to finish off the list is Forbidden Forest. Released in 1983 and developed by Paul Norman, Forbidden Forest wasn't just a shoot 'em up. It was a full-blown nightmare-fueled action horror experience and a system best known for games about fountain falls and racing cars. Forbidden Forest felt like a portal to something darker. Let's talk atmosphere. The moment you load the game, it oozes tension. You are a lone archer wandering in a monster-infested forest. The music? A haunting dynamic score. Yes, I did say dynamic. The game actually changes music to match the action, which was practically unheard of back in 1983. The visuals might be primitive, but the use of color and parallax scrolling gave it a spooky, surreal vibe. It's like an 80s VHS horror tape turned into pixels, with giant ants, floating eyeballs, and blood. Yes, blood on a C64 game. Forbidden Forest was ahead of its time. It featured a day-to-night cycle, boss battles, and a sense of progression that gave it an almost cinematic feel. And remember, this was on a floppy disk, on a machine with less memory than your smartwatch. You weren't just scoring points, you were surviving. Each enemy wave felt like a set piece. You didn't know what would come next. A dragon? A swarm of wasps? Death itself?
I've been finally winding down.
Death is gruesome, seriously. One moment you're walking, the next you're being crushed, impaled, or devoured. And it was glorious. It gave Forbidden Forest an edge that most games of the time simply just didn't have. Well, Forbidden Forest might not be a household name today. It paved the way for horror games long before Resident Evil or Silent Hill existed. It even got a sequel, Beyond the Forbidden Forest, with improved graphics and even more gore. To me, Forbidden Forest is a game I could replay over and over again. The enemies are as dark as the game itself. One of my favorite enemies in the game was the giant frogs that can squish you if they land on you, along with the music at some times. You have no background music until an enemy shows up. Forbidden Forest isn't just great because of what it did for the time. It is great because it dared to be different. It makes horror, action, and atmosphere into a package that's still memorable over 40 years later. And that wraps up my list of favorite Commodore 64 games. Some are true classics that still hold up, and some bring back so much nostalgia. The C64 wasn't just a computer, it was a gateway to incredible worlds, unforgettable stories, and some seriously fun gameplay. If you have any personal favorites I didn't mention, drop them down in the comments. I love to hear what your C64 gems are. Thanks so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, don't forget to like, subscribe for more retro gaming goodness. Until next time, keep those joysticks ready, and the pixel magic alive. Peace out, and stay frosty.